Hello, everyone. My name is Danny the Two, and this is the Danny the Two podcast. And you know that it's the Danny the Two podcast because you clicked on it, presumably. Today's Wednesday. It's Wednesday really early in the morning, depending on when you're listening to this. You should know by now that I release podcast episodes on Wednesday. And if you did not know that, then you don't have the right to call yourself a Danny the Two podcast fan. Get the fuck out. I hope that you have a mildly inconvenient day. Nothing too crazy. I don't hope you die or get hurt or anything. Just mildly inconvenient. Like, I hope that you have like 3 sips less of coffee than you wanted, or I hope that you hit one more red light than you usually do on your way to work. I guess most people aren't working now. I hope that you go to the store to stock up on groceries and you cannot decide which brand of ketchup to get. Now, I'm going to be honest, that last one might have been a little bit too far because, according to this article that we're reading today, having too many choices is making you unhappy. So I think I'm going to title this in the same way I've been titling the rest of them. I'm going to turn it into a question like, is having a bunch of choices good? Or maybe I'll just title it like a choice fatigue or something. Also, there are some people who are having a tap dancing contest upstairs. I hope that you guys cannot hear it. If you can, then tune it out. If you can't, okay, they stopped doing it, so I'm afraid they might have just heard me say that. Holy crap, they all stopped right now. That is very scary. I hope they don't start knocking on my door in a minute. That would be... No, okay, I'm still hearing it. Okay, good. Okay, so this article is from fastcompany.com. It is called Why Having Too Many Choices is Making You Unhappy. It was written on June 4th, 2014 by Jane Porter. As always, the link to this article is in the show notes. The show notes, guys. Pay attention. I've been saying this whole time. Come on. You're really letting me down here. So if you haven't noticed, I'm trying to toss in a little more jokes and be a little peppier and kind of like rag on you guys a little bit because for the past couple episodes, I have been going ham on some serious topics, some really depressing stuff in a way, and a lot of stuff has kind of come into the limelight in my personal life regarding those episodes, both publicly and privately in conversations I've had with people since then. So I'm trying to lighten the mood a little bit. I have noticed that I am continuing to think on and dwell on negative thoughts, and those are not helpful. So I am just going to say, yeah, let's just try to make myself happier and just be a little simpler. And we're off to a good start because the start of this article talks about toilet brushes. Toilet brushes are part of the toilet family. So that's a good opportunity for some top tier humor. So let's go ahead and hop into the article here. Amazon sells 1,161 kinds of toilet brushes. I know this because I recently spent an evening trying to choose one of them for the bathroom in my new apartment. Nearly an hour later, after having read countless contradictory reviews and pondering far too many choices, I felt grumpy and tired and simply gave up. The next day, I happily bought the only toilet brush the local dollar store offered. Now, I'm not going to toss in any toilet jokes. I just think it's pretty cool that this Jane Porter just is so passionate about toilet brushes that she decided to spend over an hour or nearly an hour deciding which one to get, only to get none of them because none of them satisfied her. And if that sounds a little weird to you, like why would anybody spend that much time on something like that? Think about the last time that you purchased something important to you. So maybe you have a cell phone, maybe you have a computer outside of technology, maybe it was a car, maybe you're a grown up and you were looking for a house or an apartment. You remember that experience. It's tough to have so many choices and compare them. The first house you see might be perfectly fine for you to live in, but you know you might get something better if you keep looking. So that's what causes the stress here. So let's hop back into the article. Too many choices exhaust us, makes us unhappy, and lead us to sometimes abscond. Don't know that word. That's great. Abscond from making a decision altogether. Researcher Barry Swartz called this choice overload. And it's not just insignificant details like which brush to wipe the inside of the toilet with. Having too many choices in our creative and professional lives can lead us to avoid making important decisions. As the number of options increase, the costs in time and effort of gathering the information needed to make a good choice also increase. The level of certainty people have about their choice decreases, and the anticipation that they will regret their choice increases. Now, I remember when I was to the point where I wanted to buy my first real smartphone, and I kind of went crazy with that. I looked at a bunch of different brands and their prices, and I watched a bunch of reviews, and I watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and I made like a spreadsheet, and I went over all of the phones that were in my price range. I went over the benefits and the disadvantages for each phone, and I tried to figure out which ones were most important to me. So I wanted to make sure I had the perfect smartphone for me. Now that's not going to happen. There is no perfect smartphone for me, but I ended up spending way more time on that than I needed to. Now I ended up with a phone that was pretty good, and I ended up using it for the next few years. But at the same time, I recognize in the past that I probably spent way more time on that than I needed to. Now, that's all right to do because I chose to do it and it was something I was passionate about, wanted to make sure that I picked something that was good. But if you're spending time and energy on something that's not important, it all kind of goes down the toilet. So let's continue with the article. Understanding how and why we make decisions can perhaps help us make better choices down the line. We make poorer decisions when we are tired. It's caused by decision fatigue. The mind can only sort through so many options and make so many choices before it starts to run out of steam. That's why impulse buys like candy bars and magazines at the checkout aisle in the grocery store can be hard to resist. We've exhausted all our good decision-making skills. The same goes for our workday. Making lots of decisions not only exhausts us, but it can put us in a foul mood. A study out of Columbia University found that judges were more likely to give prisoners a favorable ruling in the beginning of the day and after a food break than at the end of the day. What the fuck? Holy shit. That's scary as fuck that judges, if a judge is having a kind of a lousy day or they didn't get breakfast that day, then you're fucked. That's scary as shit. Okay. Yikes, that freaks me out. That's why it's important to make your most important decisions in the morning rather than at the end of an exhausting day when your energy has been depleted. The, quote, sleep on it, quote, idiom really does have clout when it comes to making big decisions. Plus 1,000,000 points for using clout. That's pretty great. When we're tired, we tend to conserve our energy by making choices based on a single factor like price, for example, rather than considering all the other determinants that go into making the best decision. When you're doing this, you are acting as what researchers call a cognitive miser. Another study out of Columbia University shows that this happens when consumers are given a lot of features to choose from when buying a car or suit. After a while, people start asking for the default option rather than carefully weighing each decision. This can also happen when faced with a decision in your creative work. Given the endless options of which route to take, we can sometimes end up going with the more conventional path simply because it's the easier way to go. Imposing your own constraints when trying to make a choice in your professional and creative work can help you make better thought-out decisions. A study from New York University found that restricting the choice of creative inputs actually enhances creativity. In other words, letting yourself have less options to choose from can help you arrive at a more creative answer. I think that's pretty cool. I agree with that. I have definitely experienced that. So here's a good example from my recent life. I have a job that I've started working at fairly recently, like about a year ago, and we had to choose insurance plans. We had a guy from Aflac come over and was like, okay, so here's a lot of the different options. Now, Aflac is really great because it's super duper customizable. You can choose what you want. You can choose what you don't want. So you can save money and you can make sure that your plan is tailored to you. Now, that sounds great on paper, but the problem is they have so many options that they just overwhelm you. And insurance is pretty complicated. Most people don't want to spend their time looking at insurance and figuring out which plan is best for them. So they end up wasting their time probably, for the most part, just going to end up with whatever's default anyway. Now, whenever I go shopping with my girlfriend, she likes to spend a lot of time looking for specific things, whether it's types of food, whether it's clothes. She will spend a lot of time looking at all of the options available. Now, what I do is I find the first thing that I think, yeah, this is good. I grab it and I move on with my day. So the reason that I do that is because I want to preserve that energy for something I actually care a lot about. Now, it's good that Mariana likes to spend a lot of her time looking at clothes, trying to find the best one that she likes. For me, I don't really care about clothes. So for me, it's the easiest route and it makes the most sense to pick one that I like and go with it. If I was more passionate about fashion, I would probably like to spend my time doing that because it would be a fun exercise. But if it's not something I enjoy doing, that exercise will just leave me tired and I won't feel like I gained anything. So that's kind of a negative, you know? So what does this all mean? When it comes down to it, this article is just trying to explain that having too many choices is making you unhappy, and spending too much time trying to sort through the options to find the best one is not great for happiness and health and all that good stuff. And this is something that I agree with. This is not necessarily an opinion article. This is more of a research-based article that kind of presents a conclusion that is a little bit interesting, but is still technically the truth. And I can attest to this even recently because I've had a hard time trying to figure out what topics I should talk about for this podcast. So I've mostly just been talking about things that are on my mind and things that I find interesting. But even then, I still kind of have a hard time figuring out which one of many ideas to choose if I happen to come up with many ideas. It's easier if I just have one idea that I'm like, oh, I love that idea. Then I record that idea and that's it. That's the plan. But recently, it's kind of been a little bit tougher because I'm trying to figure out what to talk about that will raise my spirits and make the whole vibe of the podcast be a little more positive. So I've been trying to figure out what things to talk about that are more positive. So since I don't really have a lot of inspiration that's immediately like, this is a positive thing to talk about, I'm having to look a lot harder for things to talk about that are positive. So I found a couple different things that I'm like, yeah, maybe this will work, maybe this will work. And to be honest, I'm just not feeling it. It's very difficult for me to think of things that are positive, but at the same time, I really don't want to keep dwelling on negative things. So this podcast, at this point, I'm trying to make it more informative and just teach people about cool, interesting concepts that are psychological or philosophical or something like that. And eventually I'm going to get into the swing of things and just be more of my normal happy self. And I can just talk about things that are cool, things that are on my mind, and that will be great. Until then, unfortunately, I'm kind of in a weird limbo spot. I'm hoping that it's not going to take too long for me to get back into the swing of things. Hope you guys understand and still give me feedback and stuff. The feedback on everything has been great. I've really appreciated it. I've gotten some great feedback. And I have a little bit of a confession to make. I think I might be developing a little bit of a speech impediment or something. I don't really know. I'm recording these podcasts and I am screwing up so much. I'm slurring over my words and that I'm like this right now. My brain just kind of gets like, my brain just had to clock out in the middle of a sentence and I just get completely stuck. I don't really know what's going on. It might just be stress related, but I'm really hoping that this podcast is legible. I've already stopped recording a couple times, just edit what I have to make sure it's coherent a little bit, but I'm having some issues with it. I'm hoping that this is fine. Guys, please give me feedback. Let me know if you think this was the worst episode or if you think that I'm doing all right and I'm just being too hard on myself. I'm in a little bit of a weird spot right now, and I know that I've been in a weird spot for the past few episodes. So I hope that this won't be too crazy of a switch of just like trying to fake it till I make it, of talking about more positive things. I'm being a little vulnerable here. It's the end of the podcast. The only people who are listening here are the people who are my true fans. Shout out to you guys, true fans. So with that being said, I just want to sincerely thank you guys for listening and giving feedback and being so positive about this podcast. So with that being said, that's a wrap.